Before the Fellowship was the greatest story you've never heard. I'm Greg.
I'm Cameron.
Join us as we read and react to the Silmarillion by J.R.R. Tolkien. Last time we concluded chapter 21. Nineel found Turin and the wounded dragon and desperately tried to wake Turin. As Glaurung died, his spell on her was broken, and she remembered her life and her identity. She bid farewell to Turin, whom she now recognized to be her brother, and cast herself into the chasm. Brandir returned to the people and recounted what happened. As he spoke, Turin appeared. He cursed Brandir and slew him before fleeing into the woods. Just as despair overcame him, Mablung arrived. He revealed all that he knew, that Morwen perished and Nienor fled, justifying Brandir. Turambar returned to Kabed and Aras and asked Gurthang his sword to slay him swiftly. The blade agreed, and Turin took his life by casting himself upon the point of the blade. Mablung and the men of Brethil arrived to find Glaurung and Turin with the blade broken. The elves sing a song of lament for the children of Húrin. Today we begin chapter 22 of Quenta Silmarillion, beginning on page 227 of the second edition. Chapter 22 of the Ruin of Doriath. So ended the tale of Turin Turambar, but Morgoth did not sleep nor rest from evil, and his dealings with the house of Hador were not yet ended. Against them his malice was unsated, though Húrin was under his eye, and Morwen wandered distraught in the wild. Unhappy was the lot of Húrin. For all that Morgoth knew of the working of his malice, Húrin knew also, but lies were mingled with the truth, and aught that was good was hidden or distorted. In all ways, Morgoth sought most to cast an evil light on those things that Thingol and Melian had done, for he hated them and feared them. When, therefore, he judged the time to be ripe, he released Húrin from his bondage, bidding him go whither he would. And he feigned that in this he was moved by pity, as for an enemy utterly defeated. But he lied, for his purpose was that Húrin should still further his hatred for elves and men ere he died. Then, little though he trusted the words of Morgoth, knowing indeed that he was without pity, Húrin took his freedom and went forth in grief, embittered by the words of the Dark Lord. And a year was now gone since the death of Turin his son. For 28 years he had been captive in Angband, and he was grown grim to look upon. His hair and beard were white and long, but he walked unbowed, bearing a great black staff, and he was girt with a sword. Thus he passed into Hithlum, and tidings came to the chieftains of the Easterlings that there was a great riding of captains and black soldiers of Angband over the sands of Unfoglith. And with them came an old man, as one that was held in high honor. Therefore they did not lay hands on Húrin, but let him walk at will in those lands, in which they were wise, for the remnant of his own people shunned him because of his coming from Angband, as one in league and honor with Morgoth. Thus his freedom did but increase the bitterness of Húrin's heart, and he departed from the land of Hithlum and went up into the mountains. Thence he descried far off amid the clouds the peaks of Crissaegrim, and he remembered Turgon, and he desired to come again to the hidden realm of Gondolin. He went down, therefore, from Ered Wethrin, and he knew not that the creatures of Morgoth watched all his steps. And crossing over the Brithiach, he passed into Dimbar, and came to the dark feet of the Echoriath. All the land was cold and desolate, and he looked about him with little hope, standing at the foot of a great fall of stones beneath a sheer rock wall. And he knew not that this was all that was now left to see of the old way of escape. The dry river was blocked, and the arched gate was buried. Then Húrin looked up to the gray sky, thinking that he might once more descry the eagles, as he had done long ago in his youth. But he saw only shadows blown from the east, and clouds swirling about in the inaccessible peaks, and he heard only the wind hissing over the stones. But the watch of the great eagles was now redoubled, and they marked Húrin well, far below, forlorn in the fading light, and straightway Thoronodor himself, since the tidings seemed great, brought word to Turgon. But Turgon said, "Does Morgoth sleep? You were mistaken." "Not so," said Thoronodor. "If the eagles of Manwë were wont to err thus, then long ago, Lord, your hiding would have been in vain." "Then your words bode ill," said Turgon, "for they can bear but one meaning. Even Húrin Thalion has surrendered to the will of Morgoth. My heart is shut." But when Thoronodor was gone, Turgon sat long in thought, and he was troubled, remembering the deeds of Húrin of Dorlomin. And he opened his heart and sent to the eagles to seek for Húrin, and to bring him, if they might, to Gondolin. But it was too late, and they never saw him again in light or in shadow. For Húrin stood in despair before the silent cliffs of Ecordiath, and the westering sun, piercing the clouds, stained his white hair with red. Then he cried aloud in the wilderness, heedless of any ears, and he cursed the pitiless land. And standing at last upon a high rock, he looked toward Gondolin and called in a great voice, "Turgon, Turgon, remember the fen of Serek. O Turgon, will you not hear in your hidden halls?" But there was no sound save the wind in the dry grasses. "Even so they hissed in Serek at the sunset," he said. And as he spoke, the sun went behind the mountains of shadow, and a darkness fell about him, and the wind ceased, and there was silence in the waste. Yet there were ears that heard the words of that Húrin spoke, and report of awe came to the dark throne in the north. And Morgoth smiled, for he knew now clearly in what region Turgon dwelt, though because of the eagles no spy of his could yet come within sight of the land behind the encircling mountains. This was the first evil that the freedom of Húrin achieved. As darkness fell, Húrin stumbled from the rock and fell into a heavy sleep of grief. But in his sleep he heard the voice of Morwen lamenting, and often she spoke his name, and it seemed to him that her voice came out of Brethil. Therefore, when he awoke with the coming of the day, he arose and went back to Brithiac, and passing along the eaves of Brethil, he came at a time of night to the crossings of Teiglin. The night sentinels saw him, but they were filled with dread, for they thought that they saw a ghost out of some ancient battle mound that walked with darkness about it. And therefore Húrin was not stayed, and he came at last to the place of the burning of Glaurung, and saw the tall stone standing near the brink of Cabed Nadramarth. But Húrin did not look at the stone, for he knew what was written there, and his eyes had seen that he was not alone. Sitting in the shadow of the stone, there was a woman, bent over her knees, and as Húrin stood there silent, she cast back her tattered hood and lifted her face. Gray she was and old, but suddenly her eyes looked into his, and he knew her. For though they were wild and full of fear, that light still gleamed in them that long ago had earned for her the name Elidvin, proudest and most beautiful of mortal women in the days of old. You come at last, she said. I have waited too long. It was a dark road. I have come as I could, he answered. But you are too late, said Morwen. They are lost. I know it, he said, but you are not. But Morwen said, almost. I am spent. I shall go with the sun. Now little time is left. If you know, tell me. How did she find him? But Húrin did not answer, and they sat beside the stone and did not speak again. And when the sun went down, Morwen sighed and clasped his hand and was still. And Húrin knew that she had died. He looked down at her in the twilight, and it seemed to him that the lines of grief and cruel hardship were now smoothed away. She was not conquered, he said. And he closed her eyes and sat unmoving beside her as the night drew down. The waters of Cabed Naramarth roared on, but he heard no sound, and he saw nothing, and felt nothing, for his heart was stone within him. But there came a chill wind that drove sharp rain into his face, and he was roused, and anger rose in him like smoke, mastering reason, so that all his desire was to seek vengeance for his wrongs and the wrongs of his kin, accusing in his anguish all those who ever had dealings with them. Then he rose up, and he made a grave for Morwen above Cabed Naramarth, on the west side of the stone, and upon it he cut these words: Here lies also Morwen Elidwen. It is told that a seer and harp player of Brethil named Glirhuin made a song saying that the stone of the hapless should not be defiled by Morgoth, nor ever thrown down, not though the sea should drown all the land, as after indeed befell. And still Tol Morwen stands alone in the water beyond the new coasts that were made in the days of the wrath of the Valar. But Húrin does not lie there, for his doom drove him on, and the shadow still followed him. In summary, Morgoth releases Húrin, but he is rejected in his home of Hithlum. Thoronodor spots him from afar and reports his findings to Turgon, who decides to welcome Húrin into Gondolin, but when they seek him out, he is already gone, but not before revealing to Morgoth the general region of Gondolin. Húrin hears the voice of Morwen lamenting and seeks her in Brethil. At Cabed Naramarth, he encounters Morwen. With Húrin's hands clasped in hers, she passes away. Anger fills Húrin, and he decides to deal vengeance on anyone who had dealings with his kin. All right, let's wrap up this episode.
Wait, Greg, I wasn't listening. Can you?
Oh.
What'd you?
Yeah.
Can you read it again?
Oh, sure. One more time.
It's like a horror story in a way. You kind of imagine these horror stories where there's an evil, like, actor who captures an innocent person or a good person, poisons them to no end, and then pretends that they can go for free, but really their poison's going to be brought into the world and to their loved ones.
It's like that mouse poison that you put in there, but it doesn't kill the mouse right away. They take it back to their nest and kill all the mice.
Yeah. So we are basically Morgoth.
Yeah.
This episode is sponsored by Peter.
Just by pizza? Get like a small kickback from every pizza place.
No, Peter.
Oh,
The animal protection company movement.
Gotcha. I'm tracking. No, I am listening.
We are like
I'm
Morgoth.
listening.
We're like Morgoth.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying to mice.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, no, it's kind of horrifying.
So I wondered,
Doom. There's just doom. There's a feeling of doom. It's gonna be bad for Húrin.
About 10 pages back.
Like that's what I was dreading.
Yeah, me too. About 10 pages back, when we talked about Morwen when she leaves to search for her son, and she leaves with Nienor too, right?
Right, but then they get separated, I think.
So
quickly,
I thought that she was never heard from again, but it says, indeed, no sure tidings came ever to Doriath after. So I was surprised to see her now show up at the grave. It was the grave of Turin then?
Yeah.
Yes.
And Nienor.
Oh, yeah, because they were buried next to each other. But, well, they never found Niniel at that time. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, so sad. And then she dies of grief.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting the way that he portrays a lot of the sort of death scenes in here. She doesn't die with like a worldly peace, like a sense of like, everything's accomplished. But at least when she dies, as he looks upon her, he can see that the lines of grief and cruel hardship were smoothed away.
Yeah.
Like, at least there's that, there is a sense that, like, there is a gift in death for her. And it's not like a sort of like read between the lines, like, let's do euthanasia type nonsense. It's just the reality that, like, she suffered and her passion is now over.
Yeah, I do think, I don't know, have you ever had experiences where you're so exhausted, you just can't remember what it's like to feel rested?
Yeah, I think it's called parenthood.
So I guess in that example, then you'll never remember what it's like to feel rested again. But on days like that where you're especially tired, exhausted, just getting to bed is such a relief. It's like, okay, I can finally go to sleep. And there is a gift in that, in death, in a certain sense, like just the toil of life. And there's a line to tread with that, because if you go too far down that line of thinking, it does kind of lead to euthanasia or
why not kill you earlier
right.
Yeah.
But that's why I think we often pray for a peaceful death. We pray for a holy and peaceful death. We ask for that as a gift. We recognize that as a gift. And it's like that Gandalf quote too, that it's a doorway to the next life. And
speaking of sleepy parents, sometimes I tell my wife, I remind her that one of the names of heaven is eternal rest. And she loves that. Just like imagining, eternally.
Well, and then it's also that in this universe that for Tolkien, that death is the gift of the Ilúvatar to men. The elves observe that, and they're like curious about it too. Like, yeah.
Another thing that stuck out to me was that Húrin has this moment with Morwen. He sees some life in her, sees the beauty in her. It's almost like, hey, maybe Húrin can be the one of this family to endure in hope. And then there's that line, but there came a chill wind that drove sharp rain into his face, and he was roused and anger rose in him like smoke. It's like, okay, I think what Tolkien is saying is that the Maya and the Valar and the lords of this land, they influence the weather. And this doesn't seem to be an accident that you have Morgoth sending him away. Morgoth, who can see this happening, he has spies everywhere. And in some sense, he does control the weather, right? Do you think that it was just an accident? It was like, he's impatient.
I mean, there is that kind of sense that nothing in this world is totally an accident. It's all, there's a hand in all of it. But it is interesting because I think it would be Manwë and Ulmo who would be the lords of the air, the wind, and then also.
But doesn't Morgoth have a hand in all of them, like twisting them?
He specifically represents fire, and Aule is air, and
Manwë is air, right?
Ulmo is like the
water.
Dover one, yeah. Well, I think you are right in that. I mean, because he makes snow, right? He influences for his evil purposes. He influences these things by.
Doesn't he also influence water with storms and things like that?
Yeah, I think maybe one way you could say it is he brings out the violent nature of those things.
Yeah.
Right. Like we heard about that when I'm blanking on his name, but one of the Maya, the one that is subservient to Ulmo.
Olwe, I think.
Is that it? I think Olwe's one of the elves. But he goes.
How dare you?
He goes into, maybe it is. He goes into Morgoth's service for a time and then comes back, but he still has violence in him, and that seems to be Morgoth's influences, bringing out the violent side of
you're right,
the raging storms. And
it wasn't Orome, or was it?
Ose. Yeah.
Ose.
Yes, you're right.
I don't know.
Okay.
So yeah, rain can be nice. I'm singing in the rain.
Yeah.
It's nice and beautiful. Or there can be a chill wind that drives sharp rain into your face.
Well, we've actually got all of them in this chapter with Húrin. We have fire, we have earth, we have wind, and we have water. So we have.
Do we have heart?
We have the fire of the sun.
Yeah, I know, because we need heart to get Captain Planet here.
Yeah.
We have the fire
Maybe
of the
that's
sun
next chapter.
that pierces the clouds and stains his white hair with red, but then disappears behind the mountains of shadow, casting darkness upon him. We have the rain that obviously is there. We have him stumbling on the rock. Like, there's a presence of all of these elements.
That's interesting.
Influencing his mood. Like, the light going away gives him a darkness in his heart. He stumbles from the rock into a heavy sleep of grief. It's all
that's
there.
Lorien. Yeah, the dreams. Lorien in his dreams.
Wow.
That was really well said, Dan, but I feel like you just missed our joke because I think because you're from England, you didn't.
It was a really good joke.
I did grow up with Captain Planet because I'm from England.
Well, let's walk it back.
We are the greatest environmentalists on the planet, right?
You mentioned every single element of Captain Planet except for heart. And then you went on with your insight without appreciating that the Captain Planet almost came into this story.
Morwen is the heart.
I think maybe
I think that wasn't it that Asian guy who was heart?
Yeah.
Heart.
He was. Yeah.
I still sometimes remember Captain Planet and the Power Rangers.
Really?
what was that? What was that cartoon that you grew up with? It's like the animals of something wood, and they all die.
Animals of Farthing Wood.
Wood.
It was so good. I recommend it to probably anyone who enjoyed Watership Down, but it has a big environmental
The premise of the show is pretty much urban development is destroying the woods.
Yes.
And all these animals die.
Reminds me of Fern
and
Gully.
they have to go to the promised land. They have to sort of migrate. And
have you seen Fern Gully?
There was a lot of death in it. Fern Gully, yeah.
Similar premise.
Yeah. Fern Gully, but this was a TV show. This was a regular way to indoctrinate children into environmentalism.
Clever.
It worked on me.
Okay, can we go back a little bit with this? I'm curious what you guys think about this this bit with Turgon. He has an interesting role in this too. He hears about her and he kind of despairs, like, okay, there's clearly no good that can come from this if he's been in Morgoth's captivity for 28 years, even though he has a heart for him because they were allies in battle and everything. I just think Turgon is such a fascinating figure in the story, in his little hidden city.
I love the visuals of this. The visuals of this part are just beautiful. You know, everything from the light of the sun on the beard, but even to the introduction of Turgon back into the story, where essentially Húrin looks up to see, are there eagles there? Doesn't see them, but the eagles are there, and they bring word to Turgon, and now Turgon like gives his piece. It's really cool. Like,
yeah, you can almost
camera
see it.
work.
Yeah, you can just film this.
Yeah.
You straight away, just you have your direction there. It's really good.
Right.
Now, can you remind me how Turgon and Húrin overlapped previously? Because I forgot what happened with them.
So it was in the fifth battle. I always blank on the name of it, so I never say it right. But it's
Onoidad.
I don't think that's. I think it's Dagor Bragolak. I think that's the one. They were all in battle together in that one, and I believe the way that it worked isn't. Oh gosh, we're gonna get.
Was Húrin the first man to enter that city or something?
Well,
like
do you remember there was a point where Turgon was going to retreat back to? Yeah, this is right. Turgon was going to retreat with the elves back to Gondolin, and Húrin was part of a group of men that stayed back to fight off Morgoth's forces so that they could escape, and then he was captured. So they have a tight bond in that.
That's cool. And then Húrin spends 28 years.
Yeah.
And not only that, so the crazy thing about it, not only can he see all the evils being done, like he's given the sight of Morgoth. Not only that, but Morgoth hides from him any of the good that would have been present.
Yeah.
So you see people suffering, but you don't see anyone making any good decisions and all that. All you see is evil for 28 years. Can't imagine that.
Yeah. Yeah. But lies were mingled with the truth, and aught that was good was hidden or distorted.
Because we were talking about some good that Turin did, for example. It's like, yeah, there was a lot of bad in his life, but there was some good in there, some valor.
Yeah.
But that would have been hidden from him. You would just seen the bad.
Right. Or is twisted.
Yeah.
That's Morgoth's way.
And yeah, I mean, in Christian theology, that is what the devil does. He'll take something good and then he'll spoil it. But for those that are beloved by God in Christian theology, the evil of the devil is that he will take the good that they have done and make them believe that it wasn't good. I mean, you can look at some of the lives of the great saints, like Padre Pio, who had to wrestle with that, Mother Teresa, doubting that was anything that I did good. All I see when I look back is how I have not served God. And it's just that lies mingled with truth and aught that was good, hidden or distorted.
Then Captain Planet needs to come and clean up the mess that we left behind.
I think that Tolkien knew about Christian theology, but not Captain Planet. I just want to make sure that our audience knows.
Oh, let me look at the index.
Yeah, check your glossary.
You know what's going to happen on Discord? Someone's going to say, well, this person's name, like in Sindar, translates to pretty much literally to Captain
Like there's
Planet.
probably a name that's for planet and a name for captain.
Yeah,
I mean,
tune in next week.
I hope that happens. I
actually wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. And it's going to be Gandalf or something. It's going to be like,
yeah.
Can you imagine? We like unlock the key of the Silmarillion. Oh my gosh, it's how it all fits together. If you add heart to this story, Captain Planet comes, and that's Gandalf.
I really like this reading, and I've read to the end of Quenta Silmarillion recently just to do our prep, but I kind of want to keep talking about Turin. Like I've just been so fascinated.
Yeah, no, I'm down with that because I think he's good.
Well, I thought of
I love him.
If our audience is willing to humor us in this, I want to do one more comparison with him.
Okay.
I want to compare Turin to Boromir.
Okay.
Okay.
So for me, I was thinking about this a little bit, and part of why Turin's story is so sad is he doesn't really have that redemption at the end that Boromir had. Boromir was a great warrior. He was a man who kind of had this weight of cursedness on him, like just being in the proximity of Mordor and trying to defend the free world from the forces of darkness. And but Boromir had this opportunity in the midst of bad choices to try to take the ring, to try, he had this redeeming moment where he saved the hobbits and died a hero. And Turin did die a hero in some sense by killing the dragon, but his ultimate end was like still very, very tragic. It wasn't like dying in battle. And that's interesting because there's something, I know you compared it, Dan, to the, like the honor. What do you call
death
it?
Of
honor
samurais.
Death. Yeah. It's kind of like that, but in my mind, there's something more honorable about, much more honorable about dying in battle versus like an honor.
100%. Yeah. I think that that's true. The final end of him is tragic. And, definitely to our eyes and sensibilities, absolutely unacceptable and just not an option. But as a warrior, as somebody who has had everything taken away from him, you can kind of see how in that universe and in from a warrior's perspective that they live by the sword, they die by the sword, even if it's their own sword. I would say that there was redemption at the end. I think his somewhat repentant heart is evident when he realizes he has wrongly killed Beleg, or who? Not Beleg.
Turin.
Turin killed the lame dude.
Oh yeah.
But the lame dude was also kind of like a bit of a jerk, but he still was able to see. I wrongly slew him.
Oh, you're talking about old Clubfoot?
Yeah, old Clubfoot. I don't know what his name is. I should.
Is that Brandir?
Oh, it's Brandir. Yeah. And so you have that, but then you also have the great act of him like slaying Glaurung, which is awesome, and the tragic reality of the Niniel story arc, which is, there's a certain sense of, okay, he needed a buddy at that time, somebody to stay the sword.
Or another way to put it,
you needed a Gandalf.
I don't think Boromir went through as much as Turin went through.
Yeah,
I agree.
And yeah, that's true. But also he didn't have a Gandalf. Like I said before, like there was this need for somebody to kind of direct that power, that energy, and that pride, and put in some sort of pithy quote as he was about to stab himself.
Mm-hmm.
Pity? It was pity that stayed the hand, or whatever. And then stop him from killing himself.
Yeah.
And now he just lives as a simple monk hermit or something at the top of a mountain with Gandalf.
Yeah. One comment from Discord. This is from Mulip. I thought was really, really insightful. She said, I think it's she because there's a feminine profile picture. There's a huge similarity between Beren and Turin that you didn't remember. They're each heirs to the lordship of one of the three houses of men dispossessed since their peoples were devastated in the war. That's one of the things that they have in common. And that goes all the way back to, I think it's maybe the beginning of, there's one chapter that begins with describing the birth of Tuor and or of Turin and Húrin, like at the same time, kind of like they're both in these lines, these like important lines. And this goes back to something that we've been discussing for a bit now, which is that these men are involved in the downfall of these great elf kingdoms. So now we've already heard about the fall of Nargothrond.
Yep.
Right. Is that the one?
Yeah.
And then this is the fall of Doriath coming up. We're reading that tale now, and Gondolin is the last one, right? So,
and all three of them are from men from those houses.
So it's very interesting.
The men of the three houses. Is that what we're talking about? Page 148.
Does it list who they are? Does it remind us who they are there? But it should be Turin, Turgon, and Tur.
I see Turin.
Anyway. What we do know is
that's a great comment.
These men are introduced into these elven societies and then essentially cause the fall of their kingdoms.
Right. So,
which is interesting.
So this comment continues. Let me just read the
yeah, go ahead.
Isn't it interesting that Turin, who keeps warring with Morgoth and making use of his talent for leadership, continuously fails and suffers, whereas Beren, who gives it all up to pursue his own happiness, seems to have luck on his side? Yeah. I don't know what to make of that. In the end, it's hard to say who was the greater foe of Morgoth.
Well, does Morgoth loves the Silmarils more than any other created thing, right?
Perhaps, yeah.
And that probably wounds his pride more than anything that Turin did. That someone came into his throne room and snatched the Silmarils from him. But was Beren pursuing his own happiness, or was his own happiness bound up with doing a great good? Oh, he just did it for Luthien.
Yeah, I think he's pursuing his happiness, and I'm not sure if we're remembering all of the. Is everything that Beren does and touches? Does it turn to gold? Like, was he like perfect? I can't remember.
I mean, he got his hand bit off, so that wasn't the best.
The opposite of
yeah.
what you said. He was an outlaw, but not. It didn't say he killed men, right? Beren. He was a man of the wild, but I don't think it said.
Maybe some people in our Discord can remember what bad, if any, did Beren do? Did he slay anybody out of hatred? Did he call anyone a bad name?
I just think Beren is
steal something.
Yeah.
Who had tragedy happen to him too.
Yeah. But Turin's is more complete. He strives and he fails.
And fails.
And then it ends really badly. Beren strives and has success with a mixture of just like tragedy. Like, but the luck factor I thought was I thought that our commenter from Turin was from Discord was gonna, not sure what to make of it from the perspective of what role does luck play in this universe. That's where I thought they were going.
I mean, I think if we're talking luck, Húrin is the least lucky. Everything. I mean, he's like the Job of the Silmarillion. Like, he's only done good things and just been even more so than Turin, I think.
And this must have played out in Tolkien's life. It must have, like, because he escaped World War One, and all of his friends, I think every single one of his friends died, and so he must have felt like that kind of lucky, tragic person that Beren kind of was. In fact, he does compare himself to Beren. So maybe there's a connection even there with the luck, the tragedy. And then all of his other friends, he might have had a friend in the trenches next to him who his whole life, as he walked with him in his village, Tolkien saw that this poor fellow just keeps really trying to do the right thing, but ends up like, and now his face is blown off, like next to me.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, that was really graphic. I'm sorry. But just the sense of tragedy was really close to Tolkien's life. Yeah. And I bet it's just played out in this book.
Yeah. Well, we'll continue diving into this as we read more about Húrin and about the fall of Doriath. So let's wrap up here. If you like what you hear, go ahead and rate us 3 somewhere. It's the name of the chapter. If you like what you hear, go ahead and rate us 3 Silmarils out of 3. Follow us everywhere before the fellowship. Join the discussion on Discord. It's always a treat when, a kind of discussion pops up and people are going, sharing about their thoughts about a particular question or topic that we've discussed on the episode. So please join us there and send any comments or questions to beforethefellowship@gmail.com. Join us next time as we read the greatest story you've never heard, The Silmarillion by J.R.R. Tolkien.